Wonder what this button does. Oops, sorry buddy. What's up, ghosts and goblins? It's Rufus. And ever since I did a video on Duke Nukem 3D, I've been thinking about all the other kick-ass build engine games that came out back in the 90s, like motherfucking Shadow Warrior, which I fully intend to make a video about one of these days.
Oh, look! You're coming apart!
But since it is the spooky season, I thought I'd first take a look at a game that definitely doesn't get talked about enough, despite easily being one of the most badass shooters ever made. I'm talking, of course, about Blood. That's right, fuckers, it's time to get our hands bloody. But first, to get the backstory, you have to read the fucking manual because it's 1997. Here's the Cliff's Notes. Our tale begins in the great state of Texas in the late 1800s. You play a badass gunslinging outlaw named Caleb, who, along with his girlfriend Ophelia, have become mixed up in a sinister cult called the Cabal, who worship an ancient evil god named Chernobog, just because it's fucking metal. Apparently you guys are really good at being in a demonic cult, because you eventually rise through the ranks to become two of the Chosen, Chernobog's elite servants, alongside your homies Gabriel and Ishmael. And that's where the game begins. We open with some wonderfully shitty 90s CGI and voice acting.
Welcome, my servants.
The dark god Chernobog has gathered the four chosen ones before him.
What is your bidding, master?
And apparently he's in a bit of a mood.
You have failed me. I disavow you all.
With zero fucking explanation, he suddenly has your boy Gabriel snatched up by Sheol the giant spider, Ishmael roasted alive by Cerberus the two-headed hellhound, and your girl Ophelia stolen away by Chioch or Chog or whatever, a big-ass gargoyle.
I've taken your love. Now I will take your life. Consider my power in a hollow grave.
That son of a bitch, I'll never trust an ancient evil god again.
I live again.
The game starts with you inexplicably popping out of your grave after an unspecified amount of time in the ground. Now an undead demonic cowboy hell-bent on revenge, your goal is to murder your way through the Cabal and all their various evil creatures to find Ophelia, avenge the Chosen, and kill that bastard Chernobog. Generally speaking, the gameplay of Blood is the same as Duke Nukem 3D because it was built on the same engine, so go watch my video on that for a more detailed breakdown, but basically it's a first-person shooter where you run around non-linear levels shooting the piss out of various monsters and trying not to die. Again. The environments are three-dimensional, but the characters are just flat 2D sprites, although this is the first build engine game that featured voxels, aka 3D pixels, so some of the items and scenery are actually rudimentary 3D objects. As you'd expect, there's lots of interactivity with the game world, including actions that change the geometry of the level around you, not to mention the ability to blow up, like, fucking everything. As you journey through the levels, you'll have to solve various puzzles to open new areas, as well as find special keys that unlock certain doors. And of course, you will be constantly confronted by horrific creatures trying to put your insides where your outsides go. Everything from tiny rats to big-ass stabby ghosts. But fortunately, there's also a shitload of weapons lying around everywhere so you can fight back. Everything from a good old-fashioned shotgun to whatever the fuck this is. If you're hurt, you can grab hearts to refill your health, or these eyeball things which boost your health up to 200%. There's also armor to protect you. 3 kinds, in fact, which protect against different types of attacks: bullets, fire, and magic, as well as super armor, which gives you 200% of all of the above. There are also inventory items you can pick up and use when needed, the doctor's bag to heal your injuries on the go, beast vision, which lights up enemies so you can spot them in dark areas, a diving suit so you can breathe underwater, and magic boots that let you jump super high. And you can even find temporary magical power-ups hidden throughout the levels. The invisibility cloak makes it so enemies can't see you, reflective shots makes bullets bounce off you and back at the bad guys, the death mask makes you invincible to damage, and my favorite, Guns Akimbo, doubles your guns for 2 times the murder. So with all these tools at your disposal, you can cause all kinds of glorious carnage in your undead quest for revenge. But the main goal of each level is simply to survive to the end and find the exit button, the Seal of Chernobog, which gives you a screamy little stat screen, then dumps you into the next level. Repeat 26 times, 30 if you find all the secret levels, and you win the game. As is customary, Blood is divided into 4 episodes, each ending in a boss battle. In the first, The Way of All Flesh, you fight through a series of locations in the American Old West until you finally find your girl Ophelia at the top of a giant tower. But it's too late.
Ophelia.
So you angrily murder that fucker Chog or Choff or whatever, say farewell to your lady,
Sleep, Ophelia.
burn her body, then set out to avenge your friends. The second episode, Even Death May Die, has you traveling up to the Arctic and battling creepy critters through a series of snow and ice themed levels until you find the underground lair of Sheol the giant spider and exterminate her ass. Unfortunately, your boy Gabriel is also very dead.
Forgive me, old friend.
But not completely useless because you rip out his fucking heart and drink the blood for sustenance. Hardcore, man. The third episode, Farewell to Arms, is set in a French city during the war. Which war, I have no idea, the game's pretty vague on the timeline, and murdering your way through various urban environments as they actively explode around you, until you find the hidden den of the giant 2-headed fire-breathing Cerberus and kill the bastard.
Good doggy. Play dead.
You then cut him open, stuff his body full of explosives, and blow his ass up.
Rest in pieces.
That's for Ishmael, motherfucker. And the final chapter, Dead Reckoning, has you battling through various secret Cabal strongholds, which get progressively more weird and surreal as you go, until you finally reach the Hall of the Epiphany, Chernobog's lair, to take him down once and for all. But I won't spoil the ending for you. In addition to single player, Blood also features multiplayer, where up to 8 people can either cooperatively play through the single player campaign, or participate in a bloodbath. A pretty standard deathmatch mode where you and a bunch of other Calebs compete to see who can kill each other the most, either in a level from the single player campaign or in one of the 8 multiplayer exclusive maps. There's also Team Mode, which is a classic 4v4 capture the flag match.
Blue captured the flag.
Multiplayer also has a couple of extra fun features, like the Crystal Ball power-up, which lets you see where other players are on the map. Unfortunately, there aren't a ton of players online these days, but the multiplayer is a blast. I highly recommend it if you get the chance. Altogether, Blood is a super fun, incredibly dark, ultra-violent horror fest. But who do we have to thank for this masterpiece? Flashback to 1993 in the tech hub of Redmond, Washington. 2 dudes named Nick Newhart and Jason Hall were working as programmers at Edmark, a company that made educational games for kids like Thinkin' Things, which, well, looked like this. Understandably bored of making educational games for goddamn kids, Nick and Jason came up with the idea to make their own very much not for kids game using the much hyped Build engine, at the time still in development over at Apogee. So the guys reached out to Apogee and successfully talked them into providing a small budget for the project. Jason decided to play it safe and stay on at Edmark, but Nick immediately quit that shit to pursue his dream, founding Q Studios and hiring a small team of artists and programmers. Now his original idea was to make a dark fantasy themed game, but since there were already 2 other dark fantasy build engine games in development, Witch Haven and Power Slave, they quickly dropped that idea and decided instead, based on their love of scary movies, to make an entirely horror-themed shooter, codenamed Horror 3D. They worked on the game for 3 solid years, but times were tough. Apogee, who had since changed names to 3D Realms, was barely giving Q Studios enough money to survive, since they had their hands pretty fucking full already. Duke Nukem 3D had become an international mega hit, and they were in the process of finishing up development on Shadow Warrior, so that weird little redhead stepchild of a horror game was not a priority at all. Things looked dire for Q Studios, until who swooped in to save the day but Nick's old buddy, Jason Hall, who had kept himself busy since the Edmark days, founding Monolith Productions, now known for hit game series like No One Lives Forever, Fear, Condemned, and Middle-earth. But back in 1996, they were a brand new company with a little bit of money in their pocket looking for their first big project. Since they were old friends, they decided to buy the struggling Q Studios from 3D Realms along with the rights to their horror game, and merge it with their company, and they kept the entire Q Studios staff on board to finish the game. Now officially named Blood, it was finally released in May 1997, and it was a moderate success, getting decent sales and good reviews, but it was unfortunately overshadowed by mega hit shooters like Duke Nukem 3D, which had already been out for a year at that point, as had Quake, the first fully 3D shooter with actual character models and shit, so by the time Blood came out the build engine was kinda old news. However, in the years since its release, it's developed a massive cult following and is widely regarded as the best of the build engine games, even better than Duke Nukem 3D, and indeed one of the best shooters of all time. But what makes it so damn good? Well, my favorite thing about Blood is that even for a horror-themed game, they really doubled down on the horror. The entire game, top to bottom, feels like you're in some combination of a gothic novel and a gory slasher flick. All the levels are just dripping with spookiness, from the scenery to the sound design. And I like that they're ambiguous about what year it is. It looks like the early 1900s, but there's stuff that shouldn't be there, like shopping malls, making the whole thing feel weirdly out of time. Then, of course, there's our main character, Caleb, who, rather than some gallant hero, is a fucked up homicidal zombie cowboy whose only motivation is revenge and takes twisted pleasure in annihilating his enemies. Or random innocent bystanders, because this game has those too. And Blood has one of my favorite collections of bad guys ever, all straight out of a scary movie. Ever present throughout the game are shitloads of heavily armed cult members who hurl insults at you in a mysterious language. That, fun fact, the developers actually invented and documented. There are also pesky rats and bats, which are really just there to be annoying, axe-wielding zombies who have a tendency to come back to life if you don't kill them hard enough, but you can blow their heads off and kick them around, which is fucking hilarious. Big fat zombies who puke corrosive green goo and throw meat cleavers, flying gargoyles that hurl bones at you, their big brothers stone gargoyles that shoot magic fireballs out of their eyes, poisonous spiders whose bite makes you delirious as fuck, or go temporarily blind depending on which color they are, as well as mother spiders who run around shitting out a bunch of both. Then there's fire-breathing hellhounds, killer eels, fish-human hybrids that can murder you on land and underwater, disembodied hands that jump up and choke you, scythe-wielding phantoms that shoot ghostly skulls, and all these monsters satisfyingly explode into ludicrous amounts of blood and guts when shot. This game's title is no lie. So many fucking jibs. They even have different over-the-top death animations based on which method you use to kill them, which is super fun. The commitment to the horror theme even extends to the power-ups. It's not just generic health packs, but bloody beating hearts that it's implied Caleb is actually eating for strength. He is a zombie after all. Rather than the atomic health, it's a giant monster eyeball. The magic armor is a Necronomicon-like dead skin mask. Hail Geen. The super armor is a disembodied rib cage. Invincibility is a pentagram-shaped Baphomet mask. And even the keys are spooky shit like the skull key, spider key, or dagger key, rather than just being different colors. That's not even to mention all the homages to horror movies, TV, and literature found throughout the game. There are references to The Crow, The Raven,
Nevermore.
Phantasm, Macbeth,
Out, damned spot.
Treehouse of Horror,
Fresh victims for the ever-growing army of the undead.
Reanimator, Pickman's Model, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, Single White Female,
Yeah, single white female.
Ghost,
Get off my train.
Something Wicked This Way Comes, Freaks, Evil Dead, The Pit and the Pendulum, Jaws,
You're going to need a bigger boat.
Dead Calm, The Shining,
Here's Johnny.
Seven, The Cask of Amontillado, It's Alive, Cujo,
Cujo?
Nightmare on Elm Street,
1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
Friday the 13th, Return of the Living Dead, X-Files, Dawn of the Dead, Poltergeist, Frankenstein, Sleepy Hollow, and of course a shitload of Army of Darkness.
I live again. Hey, she-bitch, let's go. Good, bad, I'm the guy with a gun.
And that's just scratching the surface of the hundreds of references hidden throughout Blood. I think it's safe to say the developers were legitimate horror fans, and they packed as much of it into this game as humanly possible. And besides stylistic appeal, the level design in Blood is also fucking amazing. These maps are complex, non-linear, and incredibly fun to explore. Just watch out for booby traps.
Whoa, wrong door.
Now you can go full Doom and just run around shooting shit and have a great time doing it too. But if you pay a little attention, you'll notice lots of fun little details the developers added to each and every level, including a shitload of secret areas and Easter eggs. This game even has super secrets, which are rare and harder to find, but reward you with powerful items and weapons, as well as a special little banner on the stat screen. Blood also has 4 entirely secret levels, 1 per episode, whose entrances are cleverly hidden in hard to find spots. But all of that fun stuff aside, what really impressed me was how the level designers managed to use a pretty rudimentary 3D engine to create realistic, recognizable settings, which feel way more polished than Duke Nukem 3D's. Sure, there's a handful of generic spooky churches, underground crypts, and hellish temples a la Doom or Quake, but the majority of the maps are based on identifiable real-world locations. We get a funeral home, a train station, a moving fucking train, which really blew my mind at the time, an evil carnival, a house of horrors, a pirate ship, a lumber mill, a snow-covered hotel straight out of The Shining with obligatory hedge maze, an Arctic canyon, a haunted house, a gold mining facility, a big-ass mine shaft complete with minecart ride, downtown city streets featuring a meat processing plant, a restaurant, and a bank, a sewer system, a hospital, a factory, a huge fucking dam, a Frankenstein-style laboratory, an aquarium, a crematorium, a Friday the 13th inspired summer camp, the aforementioned Dawn of the Dead shopping mall, and even a really fucking weird map where you appear to be running around inside the guts of some kind of giant monster. And I was impressed with the continuity between levels as well. They actually connect to each other. For example, you end the train level by blowing up the engine, and start the next one by climbing out of the wreckage, as opposed to just dropping randomly into a new map. The multiplayer levels are fun too. Most of them are just generic spooky castles and rusty industrial areas to match the tone of the single player maps, but they're fun to run around in and chock full of little secrets to find. And the two maps designed with Capture the Flag in mind are particularly fucking awesome. One is a red versus blue battlefield complete with artillery you can fire and booby traps you can set off to surprise the enemy. And the other is a soccer stadium with opposing red and blue locker rooms and a lone zombie on the field just begging for you to blow his head off and kick a goal. Altogether, these are some of my favorite first-person shooter maps of all time, with complexity and attention to detail that truly blows Duke Nukem 3D out of the water. And of course, the fundamental gameplay is also fucking awesome. Running, jumping, and swimming around the levels feels fluid and intuitive, so you have great freedom of movement to explore the maps, and enemy combat is a fucking blast. Just like Duke Nukem, but they've added new elements that expand the gameplay a bit, like the random power-ups that give you temporary supernatural abilities, which makes things more wild and unpredictable. And I've already mentioned they added multiple kinds of armor which protect you against different types of damage, but the various enemies are also vulnerable to different types of attacks. For example, zombies are really easy to set on fire, but fire has almost zero effect on hellhounds, who you can kill with electricity, which has no effect on phantasms, who are vulnerable to good old-fashioned bullets, which bounce right off stone gargoyles, and so on. Because of this, Blood is one of the rare examples where every single weapon is useful the whole way through the game. And what a glorious fucking arsenal it is, particularly because Blood was also the first build engine game to have alternate fire for its weapons. Your default attack is a pitchfork, which is slightly more creative than just punching or kicking, and handy for lower tier enemies like zombies. Then you get a flare gun, which sticks to bad guys and sets them on fire, or shoots a cluster of flares to immolate a bunch of dudes at once. A sawed-off shotgun, probably the most versatile weapon in the game, that can fire either one barrel at a time or both barrels at once, which sends enemies fucking flying. A Tommy gun, which can be used to mow down foes in front of you, or sweep an entire room side to side. Bundles of dynamite, which explode on contact with enemies, as well as proximity dynamite, which blows up when somebody walks too close, and remote dynamite, which gives you a big satisfying detonate button. And all of the above you can either throw towards the bad guys, or simply place on the ground to surprise them later. Then there's the incinerator, which can launch a big ball of napalm straight like a rocket, or a bunch of smaller ones that bounce around the room setting everyone on fire. The voodoo doll, which you can use to pick off enemies one at a time with tiny little stabs, or kill a bunch of dudes at once with one really big curse. But be careful, if it's not actually pointed at someone, it hurts you instead. There's also an aerosol spray can of all things, which can be used as either a flamethrower, or lit on fire and thrown like a Molotov cocktail. The Tesla cannon, which shoots either a stream of little electric bolts, or one really fucking big one. And finally, a magic staff called the Life Leech, which fires a fuckload of explosive magical energy. But keep an eye on your ammo. If you run out, it starts using your health instead. Alternatively, you can drop it, and it'll act as a sentry gun, automatically shooting at the bad guys. So the weaponry on display here is both really weird and awesome, and the combat is way more nuanced and interesting than other first-person shooters of the time. And, despite being an ultra-violent horror game, Blood also manages to be really fucking funny. In keeping with the spirit of most build engine games, it doesn't take itself too seriously, and the developers sprinkled in a ton of fun little gags. Starting right up top with the help screen, which features wacky little animations of the game's characters, including nods to Asteroids, Pac-Man, and Donkey Kong. And throughout the game, our boy Caleb spits out goofy one-liners, masterfully voiced by Stephen Waite.
Leftovers. I'm gonna paint the town red. I'm here to donate some blood. Someone else's.
He even starts singing random songs if you stand still too long and he gets bored.
It's a long way to Tipperary.
And the maps feature a shitload of random pop culture in-jokes from stuff like The Simpsons.
Hello, may I speak to Mr. Josh? First name Hugh.
The Fugitive. Demolition Man.
Rat burgers.
The Goonies. Tiny Toons. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Star Wars.
Ooh, what a wonderful smell I've discovered.
Andrew Dice Clay.
What's in the bowl, bitch?
Gone with the Wind.
I don't know nothing about birthing babies, Miss Scarlet.
Excalibur.
Not enough.
And in one level, you even find a badly mangled Duke Nukem.
Oh, shake it, baby.
One particular part that cracks me the fuck up happens if, instead of boarding the train, you just jump down on the tracks and start walking. The level designers let you walk down a train tunnel for like 5 minutes, thinking you're gonna find some dope-ass secret at the end, until... those cheeky motherfuckers. Then, of course, there's the fucking ridiculous evil circus level, complete with carnival games like a shooting gallery, bottle toss, kick the head, and a punch-o-meter. And the best part is they give out actual prizes. They also have a gargoyle merry-go-round, a tightrope walk over a pit of snakes, and fucking mimes.
I hate mimes.
The hospital level is hilarious too. I don't think the Cabal is very good at medicine. It features a leprosy ward, scabies ward, syphilis ward, and the assisted suicide ward, which is just a room full of over-the-top killing machines. And of course, there's the fucking ridiculous shopping mall complete with a toy store that sells miniature versions of the bad guys, and constant terrible muzak. And I cannot forget to shout out the goddamn hilarious multiplayer announcements voiced by Chernabog, aka Jason Hall.
Scrotum separation. Disemboweled. Sodomized.
And that's Blood for you. Come for the murder, stay for the laughing your ass off. Now, it's usually time for all the criticisms, but I literally don't have any. This game is fucking fantastic. The only complaint I've ever heard a lot about Blood is that it's too hard. But you know what? Suck it up. Games are supposed to be hard. So, for the first time in this channel's history, I have to give this one a perfect 10 decapitated mimes out of 10. Honestly, I sometimes feel like I'm spoiling games by showing all the cool parts, but if I showed all the cool parts of Blood, this video would be 10 hours long. It's a fucking blast start to finish, and I cannot recommend it enough. Now, Blood was originally released back in 1997 as a CD-ROM for old-ass DOS computers. It was then re-released the following year as One Unit Whole Blood, which included the base game, its 2 official expansion packs, and a video strategy guide featuring this amazingly cheesy host lady.
In order to defeat the stone gargoyle Chog, you must walk among the living and the dead.
Oh shit, there you go, apparently it's Chog. Unfortunately, both of these releases are for old-ass DOS computers, and Blood has never received a true source port to update it for modern systems. The main reason being that, unlike other first-person shooters of the 90s, the developers never actually got around to releasing the full source code. Of course, this didn't stop intrepid nerds from trying with projects like Transfusion, Z-Blood, Blood CM, Blood GDX, ReBlood, NBlood, and many, many others popping up over the years, all of which were attempts to reverse engineer and recreate Blood on more modern game engines, with varying levels of success. But then, in 2019, Night Dive Studios, who've made a career out of updating and re-releasing classic games, came out with Blood Fresh Supply, which is, at long last, an official remaster of Blood and its 2 expansions for modern computers. It features support for stuff like widescreen, high resolution, and modern controls, as well as some optional new bells and whistles like a weapon wheel, extra voxels, and split-screen multiplayer. And the original DOS version is included as well if you want to relive the old-school pixely experience. You can pick up Blood Fresh Supply on Steam, Good Old Games, or the Humble Store for just $10, but it's only available for Windows. Fortunately, some of those fan ports I mentioned have more compatibility, my favorite being NBlood, which is available for Windows, Mac, Linux, and Nintendo Switch. And if you're really determined, you can use RetroArch to play the original DOS version of the game on Android, iOS, and Xbox. So as usual, you're really only shit out of luck if you're trying to play it on PlayStation. So there are plenty of ways to experience Blood, and I highly recommend you strap on your cowboy hat, grab that pitchfork, and go decapitate some zombies. Links in the description. It's legit crazy how many dudes are credited with Thinkin' Things as their first game, and their second one was fucking Blood. Seriously, the 90s were wild. Happy Halloween, kids.